I thought it was my mom at the door. I was dead wrong. The house felt wrong. It wasn't a sudden realization, more like a slow, creeping dread that had been building for weeks, maybe months. Ever since ever since, things hadn't been the same. Mom wasn't the same, and neither was I, probably. I was hunched over my laptop, the blue light reflecting in my tired eyes, trying to finish a logo design for some artisanal dog biscuit company. Graphic design paid the bills, but it felt increasingly pointless. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the old windows of our childhood home. Late autumn in Ohio, gray skies and the constant threat of snow. Perfect horror movie weather. Mom was at her book club, a bi-weekly gathering of ladies who ostensibly discussed literature but probably mostly gossiped. She loved it, a small slice of normalcy in her otherwise grief-stricken routine. It gave me a few hours of quiet, which I needed desperately. Mark, my boyfriend, was in Denver this week for a software conference. He'd been gone so much lately, I barely remembered what it felt like to have him around. A floorboard creaked upstairs. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Old houses did that, I told myself. It was just the house settling. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I glanced at the dark hallway leading to the stairs, my eyes straining to pierce the gloom. Nothing. I went back to the dog biscuits, forcing myself to focus on the color palette. Beige, brown, maybe a splash of playful red. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark: "Long day. Miss you. Talk tomorrow." Short and sweet as always. I replied with a heart emoji and went back to work. Then came the knock. It wasn't a loud, insistent pounding, but a soft, hesitant rap, barely audible over the wind. It was probably Mom, back early. Maybe the book club discussion had been particularly dull tonight. I pushed my chair back and headed for the door. Through the peephole I saw her, my mom. Her familiar silhouette, the slightly hunched posture, the way she always tugged at the collar of her coat. Relief washed over me. I was being ridiculous, letting my anxieties get the better of me, but something was off. She was wearing a different coat than the one she usually wore to book club, a dark green one instead of her usual navy blue. And the way she was standing, slightly rigid, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, felt unnatural. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. But it was Mom, right? I was just being paranoid. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. "Mom, you're back early." The woman standing on my porch looked exactly like my mother. Same gray hair, same kind eyes, same gentle smile. But the smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and her skin seemed too smooth, too perfect for a woman in her 60s who had weathered years of grief and illness. "Hello, dear," she said, her voice a slightly higher pitch than I remembered. Did I forget my key again? I stepped back, letting her in. "You usually leave it under the flower pot. I thought you had it tonight." She chuckled, a dry, brittle sound that made my skin crawl. Silly me. I must be getting forgetful in my old age. She walked past me into the living room, and I closed the door, locking it with a click. As I turned around, I noticed the coat again. It was a nice coat, but it wasn't Mom's. She hated green. "That's a new coat," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I don't think I've seen that before." She turned to face me, her smile unwavering. "Oh, this old thing, I've had it for years. Just haven't had a chance to wear it." I knew she was lying. Mom never lied. "Are you feeling okay, Mom? You seem a little different." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned, brighter than before. "Of course, dear, I'm just tired. That book club meeting was particularly taxing tonight. All that talk about symbolism." She shuddered dramatically, and I forced a laugh. "Sounds awful. Want me to make you some tea?" "That would be lovely, dear, thank you." As I walked into the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced back at the living room. She was standing there, perfectly still, her eyes fixed on me. It wasn't a loving gaze, but something cold and calculating. The kettle whistled, breaking the silence. I made 2 cups of tea, my hands shaking slightly. I added a generous amount of sugar to Mom's, the way she liked it. When I returned to the living room, she was sitting on the sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I handed her the tea. "Here you go, Mom." She took a sip, her eyes never leaving mine. "Delicious, dear. You always make the best tea, thanks." I sat down in the armchair opposite her, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to say something. I had to ask her what was going on. "Mom," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to ask you." "Yes, dear." "That coat and your voice, you just seem different." Her smile vanished. Her eyes hardened. The air in the room seemed to grow colder. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" she said, her voice a low, menacing growl. It was nothing like my mother's voice. "I know it's not you," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You're not my mother." The woman stood up, her movements fluid and unnatural. Her face began to contort, her features shifting and twisting into something grotesque and inhuman. Her eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. "You're very perceptive, Sarah," she said, her voice now a guttural rasp. "But perception can be a dangerous thing." I scrambled to my feet, knocking over the teacup. It shattered on the floor, the sound echoing through the silent house. I ran for the door, but she was faster. She grabbed my arm, her grip like a vise. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed, her breath hot and fetid on my face. I screamed, kicking and struggling against her grip, but she was too strong. She dragged me back into the living room, her eyes burning into mine. "You can't escape me, Sarah," she said, her voice a twisted mockery of my mother's. "I am your mother now." The next few hours were a blur of terror and pain. She pinned me down, her strength seemingly limitless. She spoke in my mother's voice, recounting memories, childhood stories, inside jokes. But they were all subtly wrong, twisted and distorted, like looking at a funhouse mirror. She knew everything about my mother, everything about me. It was as if she had crawled inside our minds and stolen our lives. At one point, the phone rang. She answered it, her voice instantly transforming into my mother's sweet, gentle tone. "Hello." "Oh, hi, Margaret. Yes, we're doing just fine. Sarah's here with me. We're having a lovely evening." She hung up the phone, her eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. "Such lovely friends your mother has. They'll be so worried when she stops showing up to book club." I managed to break free from her grip for a moment and stumbled towards the kitchen. I grabbed a knife from the counter, my hand shaking violently. "Don't be foolish, Sarah," she said, her voice calm and controlled. "You can't hurt me." I turned to face her, the knife clutched tightly in my hand. "Get out of my house," I screamed. "Get out of my life," she lunged at me, her movements impossibly fast. The knife clattered to the floor as she tackled me to the ground. She straddled me, her weight crushing the air from my lungs. "I told you," she whispered, her face inches from mine. "I am your mother now." I closed my eyes, bracing for the end. But then I heard a noise. A car pulling into the driveway, headlights shining through the window. Mark, he was back. The doppelganger froze, her eyes widening with panic. She scrambled off me and ran towards the back of the house. I lay there, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. I heard the front door open. "Sarah, what's going on?" It was Mark. He rushed into the living room, his face etched with concern. "Sarah, are you okay? I got a weird vibe and caught an earlier flight." I tried to speak, but no words came out. I just pointed towards the back of the house. She's not Mom," I managed to croak. "She's a monster." Mark looked at me with confusion, but he didn't dismiss me. He grabbed a heavy poker from the fireplace and cautiously headed towards the kitchen. I struggled to my feet and followed him, my heart pounding in my chest. We found the back door open. The doppelganger was gone. We searched the house, every room, every closet. She was nowhere to be found. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The police arrived a few minutes later. I told them everything, but they looked at me with skepticism. Detective Miller, a grizzled veteran with tired eyes, took notes, but I could tell he didn't believe me. "So you're saying this creature was impersonating your mother?" he asked, his voice laced with doubt. "Yes," I insisted. "She looked like her, she sounded like her, but it wasn't her. It was something else." "And where is your mother now?" I didn't know. I hadn't seen my real mother since the knock on the door. They found no sign of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. The house was just messy, like there had been a fight, but with whom? They took me to the hospital. I was bruised and shaken, but physically unharmed. Mark stayed by my side, holding my hand, trying to reassure me that everything would be okay. But I knew it wouldn't be okay. The doppelganger was still out there somewhere, waiting. The police released me the next day. They said they would continue to investigate, but I could tell they had written me off as a crazy woman. I went back to the house. It felt empty, cold, and haunted. Every shadow seemed to conceal a lurking presence. Every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down my spine. Mark insisted on staying with me, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He didn't understand what I had gone through. He didn't believe me. A few days later, Mark had to leave again for another business trip. I begged him to stay, but he said he couldn't. Work was too important. I watched him drive away, a sense of dread washing over me. I was alone. That night I received another phone call, the same distorted voice, the same mocking tone. "Hello, Sarah," it said. "Did you miss me?" I slammed the phone down, my hands trembling. I unplugged all the phones in the house. I locked all the doors and windows. I barricaded myself in my bedroom, clutching a knife in my hand. I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. Every noise, every shadow sent me spiraling into panic. In the morning, I decided I couldn't stay in the house any longer. I had to get out. I had to find my mother. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard a knock. My blood ran cold. I peered through the peephole. It was Mark. Relief washed over me. He was back. He had changed his mind. I opened the door. "Mark, what are you doing here?" He smiled, a warm, familiar smile, but something was off. His eyes seemed distant, cold. "I forgot something," he said, his voice a slightly higher pitch than I remembered. "What?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. "I forgot to finish what I started." I screamed and tried to slam the door, but he was too strong. He forced his way inside, his eyes burning into mine. "You can't escape me, Sarah," he said, his voice a twisted mockery of Mark's. "I am Mark now." I ran, but there was nowhere to run. He chased me through the house, his laughter echoing through the empty rooms. I stumbled and fell, hitting my head on the corner of a table. The world went black. When I woke up, I was lying in my bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. I sat up, my head throbbing. I looked around the room. Everything was in its place, normal, but I wasn't normal. I was broken. I was haunted. I was alone. I got out of bed and walked downstairs. The house was still silent, eerily silent. I went into the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. As I was drinking it, I heard a knock at the door. My blood ran cold. I walked to the door, my hand trembling. I peered through the peephole. It was a young woman standing on my porch. She looked tired, scared, and desperate. "Hello," she said, her voice barely audible. "Is this the Henderson residence?" I smiled, a warm, gentle smile. The smile didn't quite reach my eyes. "Yes, dear," I said, my voice sweet and comforting. "Come in. I've been expecting you."